Oh, I'm back with the Christine Schieffer, the America's her scene shifter. I could never be so lucky. Oh, wait, I am every single Sunday, every single week, every single moment of my life. She never escapes me. Now I'm wondering, is it a blessing or a curse? Has she invaded my mind? We'll never know.
No
Your
wonder
turn.
I'm always so sweaty. It's like I'm always around myself and like, whoo, just get a little worked up, hot under the collar. You know what I'm saying?
I don't know. Show us your shoulders. I'll tell you.
No, thanks. I'm unshowered today.
I feel like, if I were also a known cryptid, that's a burden. I mean, I wonder, do you go to the conferences yet with Sasquatch and everyone? Do you talk about your feelings?
Sometimes I think about who burdened me with this identity, and then I'm like,
I couldn't tell you.
Oh, right. It's empathy.
I think you just they've got to have a group therapy where all of you really talk about the limelight that you must suffer.
We do. It's called slam poetry, cryptid slam poetry. Have you been there?
I have. It's weirdly erotic.
You guys, do you know about the cryptid slam poetry? I know that it doesn't really always hit hard for a lot of people, but man, we have fun doing it in the fall. So when it comes back, you better get your butt over there. We have a good time.
Again, it ends up wildly erotic.
It does get weird really fast. So I would warn you.
We say, you send us your poetry, your personal poetry about cryptids, and at least half of them are people smashing Mothman to smithereens.
It tells a lot about our listenership and their psyches. But, I don't judge. I just am fascinated,
Yeah.
But somebody wrote a poem about you last time, and it got really weird.
Were they smashing me to smithereens? What was happening?
Yeah. Do you remember? We were like, this is a little alarming. You don't remember that?
Obviously, I learned.
Wow, it must happen so often that you don't even remember. Okay.
I do remember there being a really intense poem about me. I just don't know how it ended, and I'm a little scared
deeply uncomfortable. Yeah, but the person now is probably their feelings are hurt because you just don't even remember.
Oh well.
Sorry, try again next time.
Maybe they'll write again. I don't know. Maybe. I'm sure I could go into Google and type in poetry about M or something. I'll find it. I could always find it.
It's there. I mean, I'm sure I have it under my pillow. I mean, somewhere in my.
Look, if someone ever writes a poem and it starts with "I'm showing my shoulders for you," I'll know that it was you. It was just a diary entry from Christine. Christine, we just finished up our second leg of our tour. We went to Salt Lake. We went to Denver. How did you feel about the experience? Did you have fun? I want your highs and your lows.
Oh, wow. Thank you for asking. I had a great time. We had a lot of fun. I slept 14 hours the first night I got there.
Is that a high or a low?
Which, I mean, definitely a high.
Okay.
Except I woke up at 4 p.m. and I looked at my phone and it said meet in the lobby at 4:30, and I went, uh-oh. So aside from that, I had a great time, but you had a much more involved experience.
I went this away and that away.
You went every which way.
I did not know how gay Salt Lake is. And I guess that makes sense that in a really religious town,
I think
that there would be...
the town itself isn't gay. I think you just found the right pockets. Do you know what I mean?
I don't know. A lot of places, I just stumbled into places and they were just covered in rainbow flags.
Street corner is named after that fucking guy, Joseph Smith. It's
that's what I'm saying. I feel like I was surprised because it's such a religious area, but I guess that if there's religion in an area, there's deconstructioners in the area. I guess because also, did you know Salt Lake City, they got a hoppin', hippin', happening speakeasy scene. And that makes sense
to me because people want, that makes sense to me, definitely.
It's you're not supposed to be drinking, so now, but it's so interesting, the psychology of it's specifically speakeasies, not bars, because it's part of them still feel a little naughty about it, and they're oh, we're doing it in hiding. But then also so many people apparently have I don't know, maybe they're just all transplants and they all happen to be queer and they're just taking over Salt Lake.
I mean, maybe.
It was just odd how many places I went, unprompted, that were just covered in rainbow flags.
I love that. I mean, I'm so glad you found the right Yeah, I'm so glad about that because I don't know much about the city since I slept 14 hours through my experience there. But, I know about the big whale and I know some other
The whale.
things. And yeah,
There's,
and
I'll tell you, I had the best donut of my life. I'm like
yeah,
almost scared to say it because I don't want it to be.
you don't want people to like
I want to make sure
ruin
that
it.
one's available to me next time I'm there. But it's called the
Oh, I
Chubby
see.
Baker, and
Yeah.
the donut was called the brown butter donut. It took my breath away. I went
Brown butter
3
donut.
times.
I didn't know that. That sounds delicious.
It was everything. And then I went to obviously East High, go Wildcats, because that's
Oh, yeah.
where they filmed High School Musical in Salt Lake City at an actual high school called East High.
I had no idea about that, by the way. Like, I don't know if everybody knows that, but and it's not surprising to me if I'm the only one who's never heard that before, but I didn't know.
Here's the range of people that I am friends with. I showed Christine a picture of the front of the high school, which looks like it's straight out of the movie, by the way. I showed it to Christine and she went, "Where is that? I kind of feel like I know that a little bit."
Okay, I guessed 2 things, and one of them was High School Musical. So I was close because I said, what was the other guess? I guessed one thing, and then I said Degrassi and High School Musical. I was like, I don't know. It's a high school that I know you like. So I was close.
Ugh.
To be fair.
Also, and then I have other friends, one particularly named Ellen, who's like a Disney adult, and I FaceTimed myself next to a vague locker, like it looked like I was picking up like my cousin from high school. Like there was no detailing at all, no hint that I was even outside of Los Angeles. And she literally went, Are you at East High?" And I was like,
No way.
I was like, "How did you know that?" I was like prepared to like talk to her normally and then turn my phone around, but she already knew by like the corner of the ceiling.
I know where you are. I sense it in
She's like,
my bones.
"It's almost as if I've been there a million times."
Wow.
Anyway, I had a great time there. Fun fact about East High is that obviously their mascot is in the movie is the Wildcats. In real life, the mascot stayed the same. Like the mascot and everything, they used everything from the school, but they
Like
changed.
the logo's the same?
The logo's the same, but they changed it to Wildcat from leopards. And so it's actually the East High Leopards. And even funner fact is apparently East High's rival, no, go figure, is West High. But West High's mascot is the Wildcats.
No.
So it's like,
What are these things? What will they think of next?
the only reason I know this is because at our venue in Salt Lake, by the way, the entire crew there felt queer also, but that's just my feelings about it. I don't know how true it was, but everyone felt a little like the vibe was right. And someone that we worked with literally went to East High, and he was like, "I'll answer whatever you want." Like it just,
Wait,
I feel
really?
like,
I missed all that. Where was that?
and so you were downstairs eating food.
Oh, perfect. Oh, wait, no, I was Ubering back to the hotel because I forgot our most important piece of luggage there. So yeah, sorry, I was busy.
I feel like everyone that's ever gone to East High has like some like sad glint in their eye where they're just like, it's like a war flashback, and they're like, "Now that I've announced it, I'm prepared for all of your stupid fucking questions."
They're
And
like, fine, bring it on.
he was like, "I'll tell you anything," and I went, "Good. I have."
Did
so
he sound
much
like
to
Eeyore?
say.
I'll tell you anything.
I think his soul felt like Eeyore, but he really did put on the glam for me, which I appreciated. And I wanted to get a picture. The only picture I did not get at High School Musical was on the stage. But fun fact, anyone who was a High School Musical fan, the theater scenes actually were filmed at a different high school. So it doesn't really count anyway.
Oh.
And I wanted to, but guess what stopped me? Teenagers were actually practicing a High School Musical. So I could not. So anyway.
Wow. This is
a very good reason.
I love hearing about it because I'm like, I like watched High School Musical and stuff, but I was never like the biggest like I had friends in high school who were obsessed, and I was never really that obsessed. Yeah, well, I know that. Thank you though for clarifying. But yeah, I was like, that's so cool. I had no idea it was in Salt Lake. So
fun fact. I'll post. We can post pictures of me. I obviously got pictures everywhere at the Sharpay lockers and everything.
It's a Sharpay, yeah, which is still pink, right?
They're still pink, and it's her and her brother, which is so interesting because theirs are pink. In the movie, I think like the other main characters have like red lockers, and they weren't still red. It was just the Sharpay pink ones.
Maybe that was part of her contractual obligation. She was like, you need to keep this my Pantone shade of pink."
1,000%. Anyway, I had a great goddamn time. I went to a lot of gay stores. I
Love
went
that.
to, I mean, truly, I tried everything. I did the whole, in Salt Lake, because a lot of people don't drink, because a lot of people are Mormon, they have like restaurants that are just soda restaurants. It's essentially bars that are only mocktails,
Can you
which
name
I don't
them
know
again?
why that. Yes. Do you want to guess? Because Christine really loved the names.
Em told me one time, and they're all like these kind of onomatopoeia type. So there's like fizz and like fuck, I already forget. Fizz is the one I always hyper focus on.
There's Fizz, and then there's the big one is Swig.
Swig, yeah.
Then there's also Thirst.
Thirst.
And then my favorite is a pun because it's Soda-licious, as in so delicious.
Oh, I didn't get that the first time. That's cute. Yeah, that's cute.
I guess Swig and So-Delicious are the two big ones, and then Thirst
And then
and Fizz
I
are
announced
climbing?
loudly at the bar we were at, I'll name the next one. And Em said, no, there is no other one. And I said, no, I'm gonna name the next one.
But,
and
you named it great. You named it great.
And Eva said, let her name it, Em. And I don't even know what I said.
You said something with a PH.
Phosphate.
Phosphate. Now that's a good
I said
one.
something, but we remove all the vowels.
Right. You're right. Phosphate. Yeah.
It's very Silicon Valley, you know?
Anyway, it was a dream. Go figure, me going to Mormon country would mean I'd have opportunities as someone who doesn't drink to go to all these places and try
also,
things.
I realized this later, but it's dry January, or it was when we were there. So like everybody in the world is not everybody, but a lot of people are not drinking anyway. So I bet they were like leaning into it.
Well, it was it was so
And by the way, just
weird.
to be clear, I was not part of that group.
Nobody
Okay,
that
I'm
came to
not
our show was, I don't think.
No, I'm not a dry January or.
But so they have all these it's essentially like a Starbucks where you just go through a drive-through and the only thing to order are sodas. Although some of them had like a weird quirky snack that
Wait,
they
so
were
did
known
you
for. Like
Uber through, or how'd you do it?
I met a man named Michael, and he was my Lyft driver. I essentially paid him for the whole night, and I was like, I need to go to one of each, and I need you to just.
You're my chauffeur.
I need you to go to
for
one of
the
each.
day.
I said I'll pay you. Well, let's just do this over Venmo because Lyft is not going to give you what you deserve here. Because I
Are you
need
serious? How do you have the confidence to pull that kind of shit off? I just could never.
Because I got in a car and I actually got in a few cars before Michael and I was gauging their personalities and
Oh, so you had to wait to the right one.
I had to find the right one. And then Michael, who was a homeboy, the second I got in the car, he was ready for some social interaction because he turned
It's like,
around
I
and stuck
knew
his
we
hand
were
out
on
and
an
went, "Hi,
adventure
I'm
today."
Michael." And
Whoa!
if that's
like,
the energy
"Michael,
you're going to bring, here's the energy I'm
I'm
going to
gonna
bring.
proposition you, but not in the way you think. Let's go.
So I wanted to try as
let's go
many
to
as possible. I wanted to try as many as possible. I went to all four of them, and I just got kid sizes of things, and I got like their top 5 drinks at each of them. So I had like fucking 20 drinks in this poor man's car.
Jesus Christ, you're worse than me.
But here's the thing. Because Michael he understood the assignment. And on top of that, he was like, let me tell you the best ones. And then he helped me finish them because he was like, there's 20 fucking drinks here, even though they're kid sized. Like, let's just go to town together. And I essentially had like a bar buddy for the night. It was great.
Whoa. So you paid him in. Did you drink them all in the car or did you get out?
No, we had to drink them in the car on the way to the other place so they wouldn't
sure, you
stack
had to
on
hit
top
them
of
all.
each other. Yeah.
Man, I'm so fascinated. I'm always so impressed when people like you are bold enough to like make a plan like that because I just could never. I would never have the guts.
I so badly wanted it to be a sit down restaurant so I wouldn't bother somebody, but I also on principle had to go to these places and I didn't have a car, so I was like, I need to just find the right Lyft
There's
driver.
no other option.
And I'll end on this part is that it's very common in Salt Lake apparently for people to like at these soda places. The menu is listed in the categories are different types of soda. So like I went to one and it just said like Dr. Pepper drinks, Mountain Dew drinks, Sprite drinks. And then they're all listed with like a fun name with like different syrups and pumps and stuff that you can get mixed into them. And I took a picture of each so I could recreate them all back at home in the Schultz Fourth manner. So now I've got a full mocktail bar here. And I basically their thing there though, because even though they'll put syrups and stuff in it, their thing is to put cream to put heavy cream
Yeah, I
or half
can't.
and
It's like
half.
it's like an Italian soda, if anyone's familiar, where you put cream into it. Ugh.
It was not good. I
Yeah,
and usually
Eva
I
said that's a thing in Denver too. That in the mountains they like these Italian sodas. I cannot get my head around it.
it was not that good. It was better than I thought it would be, but it was still not yummy.
Yeah, yeah, it
And
just kind of
then
grosses me out.
and the main drink I guess out there is called the Dirty Dr Pepper, which is Dr Pepper with either like coconut or vanilla syrup mixed into it, sometimes with the heavy cream.
This I
It
like.
was I in theory that sounded good, but all the syrups in soda just made them all taste like flat diluted soda because you were just diluting it with syrup.
Oh, there's not as much carbonation. Yeah, that's fair.
So anyway,
Would you? I am just gonna quickly say I drink because I just love how bold you are, and I'm just proud of you.
Oh.
I like having friends who are like bolder than me because then I'm like, you know what, if M can do it, then I can ask my Uber driver. I can proposition my Uber driver, and so I just want to say thank you for that confidence you instill in me, and that's why I drink this week. But also, quick question: have you ever considered perhaps opening your own mocktail type of a bar? Because I feel like you would be the king of like you would. I mean, there's no doubt in any of our minds that you'd be like the premier person
that'd be cool.
to create, right? And I feel like you like as far as everything like you're very particular about the flavors, the like you know what you're doing about like in the mocktail sphere, but then also the decor, the aesthetic, like you'd be all over that. You'd be all over the events. You'd be all over the punny names. Like, I don't know. I just wonder, you'd be all over like customer experience. And I just wonder if that's something you've ever considered, because I would guarantee you'd have quite a listenership that would show up and rally for you if you did that.
So in a dream world, I could run my own mocktail bar, but
This is a dream world. The world isn't real. Nothing is real.
But you know what is real? Assholes. And there's a lot of people who are like, I've noticed at a lot, like LA just opened its very first like fully mocktail bar. And their whole thing is like, it's just like all those fucking uppity people who like, I guess had a really great opinion about alcohol at one point and have changed their ways, or they have like that filmmaker snootiness kind of to them. And they're like, well, this isn't like, I don't want to deal with people like that in my bar. I would just want to be like, no fucking assholes. Like if you want to mix, there was one drink that I got at, one of the places that was like Mountain Dew. It was like strawberry puree and like pineapple juice or something, and it tasted amazing.
It sounds
like,
delicious.
If you aren't lowbrow enough, like I would want to do a mocktail dive bar. I would love to run one of those.
That's more what I pictured, like a speakeasy type.
I would like to do that because
like an underground, like, oh well, you just have to know about it to go.
Because all the other ones are just too blech. And also a lot of mocktail places, which if for some reason you're a bartender and you ever run into me and you want to make me a drink, I'm only saying that not because I think that that's what I deserve, but it has happened quite a few times. And I just want to put a PSA out there that if you were the next person to do this for me, I feel like everyone tries so hard to really amp up the mocktail because they feel like you've already lost the alcohol experience, that they really owe it to you to like
they want to make it
this
as
mocktail
similar as possible to a real cocktail.
Yes, but like I don't give a shit about alcohol, so to make it as similar is doing nothing for me. And like so I hate the idea of like they're like, oh well, we use this. There's like all these brands now that are like alcohol replacements, and it's like it's our version of like mocktail gin, and I'm like, never on earth did I want real gin, so please don't put fake gin in it. Like give me a fucking Sprite with an orange juice, like some like just.
Like I want you to create like a
drinks.
phosphate bar from the olden days that where like didn't your grandparents have like an ice cream bar or something? Like why don't you just like clearly it's in your blood, you know? Why don't you I
would love to actually. It was called I know I'm monopolizing the time here today. I'm sorry. I'm just in a real
asking
chatty
all
mood.
the questions. No, tell me.
I like that. I feel very loved.
Oh good.
But you asked me a question and then I take it way too far.
I know what I'm doing when I ask you a question. You know that, right? Like I've known you long enough.
I know.
Okay.
No, my Gammy, who has passed, and my we called him Grandpa Schultz, who has passed. They both met when they were kids because their parents ran businesses across the street from each other. And so my Gammy, her parents, and if you happen to know anybody, by the way, ask your grandparents because I'm trying to find information on this thing. I know the location and nothing else about it, and no newspaper on earth seems to have ever talked about it. My Gammy, her parents ran what was called McDonald's Luncheonette, and I guess locals called it Mac's Place. And it was a luncheonette with it was a candy shop, an ice cream store. It did like deli sandwiches. And across the street was the Schultz Pharmacy. And
shut up.
My grandpa, he used to, I guess, help his dad at his pharmacy, and my Gammy used to help her parents at the luncheonette. And so every now and then my grandpa and Gammy would go to each other's stores because they would be picking up sandwiches for their parents, or one of them needed medicine for their parents.
One of them was getting cocaine and heroin for their parents.
Well, under the dust of the cocaine, they ended up falling in love, and that's how I came to be. So
under the dust of the okay, that makes a lot of sense. First of all, but second of all, wow. So wait, where was this? So that people who are good at like all the sleuthing,
Baldwin, New York.
Okay.
And after that,
why
they
was
ended
it
up
called
moving
McDonald's Luncheonette?
Because my Gammy's maiden name was McDonald.
Wow, and it's MAC.
I think it was. I have one
Max.
picture that exists of them in front of the place, but I think it was MC.
MC. Oh, okay. I'm just curious for those who might do a little digging, which it may or may not be me later. We'll see.
Yeah. It was it was in like the 50s and 60s, and it was called McDonald's, spelled in some way, Luncheonette, and it was known to the locals as Mac's Place, and it was across the street in Baldwin, New York, from the Schultz Pharmacy. So
wow.
Anyway, I don't even know what you asked.
I asked if you would ever consider reopening something like that, because I think you would really like knock it out of the park.
I would love to run a diner or a luncheonette.
Yeah,
my mom and I
you'd
actually
be
always
really good.
My mom and I always had a dream about opening like an old school ice cream parlor together.
That's
that
it. Cool, yeah. And I think you could sell the sodas on the side as like your own recipes or whatever. I really think you would hit it big with that. I do.
Thank you. I appreciate that. In a world where I'm not terrified of risk, that it is happening.
Listen, I'm listening to a book about confidence, and we're made to feel like we can't do anything. But guess what? Men run around and they're like, oh, well, I just assume I can do everything. So you know what?
Oh, well, now that you've said that.
Just assume you can do it. Just assume you can do it, and it'll be fine.
Thank you for the confidence boost. That's why I drank this week, because you made me feel very loved with all your questions. I did not mean to monopolize the situation, but I did enjoy talking about myself. I'm not gonna lie.
Good. No, I would rather just hear interesting stories. I wanted to hear about your grandparents' sody pop shop. So
I'll ask one question that matches mine real quick. Do you know how any of your grandparents met? Is there like any meet cutes? Or no?
What to say?
You can just say no. You're making it sound like it's like prison or something.
How to frame this? Well, if you recall the decade and state of the world during the time when my grandparents would have met.
Oh, you were Germans. I forgot.
Yeah, you forgot. Wow, good for you.
For a moment, just to get by.
I can't. But yeah. So you know, you know what? I did find one piece of information that my grandmother Maria, who I'm always trying to like reach out to and like connect with, because I'm like named after her, and she was very like mystical before you know becoming not that way. Very Catholic, but she apparently was she was in the front of the Catholic rally against the Nazi occupation of Austria, as far as I can tell from some old sources. But beyond that, I think they all kind of just had to step in line and follow the way that things had to be. So let's just leave it at that and say I'm forging a new path in my life.
Wow. You could have just said, like, they met over coffee. Like,
I mean, I don't want to lie. I mean, you know, I don't really know. And to be honest with you, it is kind of a sore spot for me because I don't know. And my parents, for understandable reasons, do not discuss their past. Not at all. We just don't do it. You're not really supposed to, or I think one
Eee.
day maybe it's too difficult, right now, but I think one day I'll probably do a better, more in-depth dive into all of that. But with my parents having their boundaries set, I don't ever want to, overstep with their
That's
own
like the only
parents.
time I think I've ever heard one of my friends' parents have boundaries about information where I'm like, maybe it is for the best. Like
No,
maybe I
literally, like my parents will
shouldn't
not tell
pry.
me. I didn't know until a few weeks ago that my grandmother had a sister, or that my grandfather had a sister. I didn't know. I barely knew I don't know my grandma's middle name. Like I don't know anything about them really. So
What?
nothing. I'm
Wild.
like, and it's very difficult for me, but
I was gonna say that has to actually be a bit of an identity crisis because you're
it
like,
does.
how do I?
It really does. It hurts a bit.
Oof.
But yeah. And then when I do find stuff out, it's like, do I really want to know? Like, is it just going to make me feel even worse? Probably. So, and my brother's very
Ooh.
comfortable, I think, just being kind of like, like we'll leave it in the past and not think about it, or not think about it, but like, just understand it for what it is and blah, blah, blah. And I'm just very like, I think I'm just hurt over it and he's not. So I stand alone in that way. I think one day, maybe when my parents are much older, they'll be like, okay, we can talk about it now. But
Yeah. No,
it's just,
I have one grandpa who I've mentioned before on here very briefly, but there's at some point I don't know what happens in my family because there's a generation where everyone beneath them was like, we do not talk about them. Like you do not
yeah,
want to know what they were doing. You do not want to know
yikes.
what was happening. And just know that we come from very bad people. And I'm like, holy shit. But
And now
of
I'm
course
like,
I
I
can't.
must know.
Exactly. That's how I feel. I'm like, I'm desperate to figure out what happened. Like, who do I
That's
come
kind
from?
of
And
how I
so,
feel. And my brother's like, why do you want to know? I'm like, I don't know because no one will tell me, I guess.
yeah, I just have to trust my ancestors who were trying to protect me before I was even born.
I
That like
guess
maybe I
so.
really don't want to know, but I'm like, no, I do. A part of me has to know, but maybe I would regret it. I don't know.
I know it's a tough line to walk, and yeah, I feel for anybody who has a disconnect from their
Yeah.
ancestors as well. I mean, remember when you showed me pictures of your ancestors, and I was like so blown away. Like I was like, I've never really seen a picture of my grandparents. Like
Yeah,
it's just so
it's
crazy to me. I'm like, how? Like it's just so. I don't know. I was like
yeah.
living vicariously. I was like, this is the
Well,
coolest
thank
thing I've
you. That
ever
means a lot
seen.
because I so that's for people listening. That's on the other side of my family where, as far as I know, there's not too many.
It's a
I don't
little,
come from bad people
yeah.
over there. The bad blood is on the other side.
Ah.
But one of my big Christmas presents to my mom this year was I went through every picture she's ever taken since she was
Mm-hmm.
fucking born in the 60s. And I digitized everything and organized them into Google Drives and did QR codes and put the actual pictures into binders. And so that way she, like, everything's connected. Even if the house burned down tomorrow, she still has those binders
Yeah.
digitally. And then I also went through I digitized all of our home videos. So it was a very, very long, like almost year-long project I was doing behind the scenes. And I found all these pictures, which to this day I'm so grossed out with my mother because she was just throwing every loose picture she ever took into like this like big ass Tupperware and didn't care about like the quality, like if the pictures were being damaged. And like
Just like
I found pictures from
shut it up
fucking
and put it away. Yeah.
I found pictures from 1885. I'm like, girl, like you can't
Oh!
just throw this into essentially a trash bin under
I
your
mean,
bed.
I understand that this is different, but to be fair, you said if somebody mailed you old photos like that, you would put them in the dumpster. So
That's true, but it
just
was
saying.
our our family,
Right. So
like,
they matter, right? True.
and so but the pictures that I found, I mean, some of them are fascinating. There's a whole binder of photos I didn't even know existed that are of grandparents before my grandparents, and like luckily my grandma's still alive and has told me stories about them. And she always told me about like one of my great great grandmas who we would have gotten along so well. And then I found pictures of her.
I know.
And then
I was enamored by her too.
it's very moving. And actually, as I'm talking about it, I think I like opened something up while I was messing with those pictures because ever since, like just talking about it right now, I can feel
know.
someone in the room with us.
Yeah.
And I never had a connection to them. And so now I'm wondering, were they always looking out for me? And now I've opened a door in a way where like now I can feel them watching me, or were they never watching me and both of us grew
You were
connected
like, hey.
together? Yeah, did we both like kind of fall in love with each other through this project? But I feel really connected to somebody, and I don't know if it's that grandma or there's an aunt that I think I might be sensing.
I remember the aunt.
Yeah, she. By the way, there's rumors that she was the first queer of our family, so I like to think that she's really looking down too. But
Love that for her and you.
last thing I'll say, we are literally already a half an hour in. I'm so sorry, everybody, but I will
it's
end on a
okay.
ghost
They'll
story.
Okay.
I'll end on a ghost story, which I've already told you, right?
I love
About
it,
my
though.
aunt?
I was going to ask you to. Yeah.
I was home and I was messing with all these pictures, and I've been feeling something kind of stirring around and someone watching out for me, but it's a feeling I've never really known before. And so I was talking to one of my friends who's a medium, and I was like, I just feel like someone's around, and I know it's from these pictures, and I've never felt them before. I don't know who they are. And she said, like, honestly, like, just ask out loud to talk to them. Like, it's that simple, and just make it specific. Like, make it be a sign that, like, it's so obvious that you would not be able to, like, make a coincidence out of this. And so I asked out loud, even in front of my medium friend, I was like, whoever's here, like, I can feel you. I know you're around. I don't know, like, what's going on, but I just need a sign that you're one of my family members, because I don't know if by messing with this stuff, I've opened up a door to everyone, or like if this is a family member. So if you can just send me, like, you know, I like to think of myself in the family as like the one who knows the most about all of our ancestry and like, and all of our tchotchkes and any backstory. I know that we don't have a lot of heirlooms. Spoiler alert, we fled, we escaped the Holocaust. So we don't have a lot going on. And we don't have a lot of like things that have been passed down through the family. I've never really seen a lot of heirlooms. And I was like, I know with confidence that we don't have anything really left after my great grandma. If you can bring me an heirloom from our family, which I know doesn't exist, if you can bring me an heirloom, that way I'll know that
Like
it's
a new one that you
a
haven't
new
seen,
one I've
right?
never seen before. Like you, and I said, like, and not only that, but like drop it on my head, like plop it in my hand,
You
like
make
do
it
it
so
like
obvious.
like have someone hand it to me. Then I'll know that like it's family that I'm sensing. Within 24 hours, my mom was like going. My mom was going through her closet, and she was like, "Oh, come over and like, you know, help me go through these earrings." And I ended up lifting up like her earring tray, and we didn't know it was hollow. I didn't know it was hollow, at least. And in there was just like these tiny little figurines. And I was like, Mom, what the hell are these? And she went, oh my God, I've been looking for those. And she grabbed them and plopped them in my hand. And she went, this is the closest thing to a family heirloom we have. I was like, what? And they were these little statues, these little monkey statues of hear no evil, see no evil, speak no evil. And she was like, when I was a kid, they were really old. So I'm thinking they were like, she remembers that queer aunt I was telling you about. She said that they used to be hers, but she remembers them being old. So they might have even been handed down to her, which was a great aunt.
I think it's the queer aunt running around.
I think it's her. And if it's not
guess.
her, then it's her mom. It's one of the two. But
it's just, I found that so stunning because I also listened to a book by Laura Lynn Jackson, and because I have felt such a weird, like, lonely disconnect from my people who've passed, my grandparents and stuff. And she says, like, basically you just have to ask for something really specific, and like it'll happen. Just like ask for like a giraffe riding a tricycle or whatever, and then like you'll see, I don't know, a cartoon, and it happens all the time. And so I had asked for that stuffed alligator, remember? And then we read that next morning. We read an episode, or I'm sorry, we did our listeners episode, and in one of the things was like a ghost story about how a stuffed alligator appeared in her living room, and I was like, oh, that's so weird. So
amazing.
It's kind of cool. It's so if you are out there and you're just thinking like, I wonder, don't be afraid to ask. Worst that happens, you feel a little silly, but.
Anyway,
the world is a weird place, so.
And that's why we drink.
Amen. Tell me a story.
Speaking of weird stories, Christine, I've been waiting to cover this for so long.
Ooh.
And you have to know it. You have to already know what's coming. Or like, maybe not yet, but when I say the title, there's no way you don't know what the story is. But get ready to banter because this is just beyond bananagrams.
Okay.
Noodles all the way to the top. This is the Kentucky meat shower.
Oh, holy shit. I have heard about this.
AKA
Boy, oh boy.
the Kentucky meat storm, AKA Carnal Rain.
Ew, that's the new album that Zach Bagans is releasing next week.
Did you know about it before you moved to Kentucky?
I had heard about it, but only because I lived in Cincinnati, which is like
Oh.
10 minutes from Kentucky. So I was basically always in, in Kentucky almost.
This is one of my favorite stories. I've always wanted to cover it. It's just a mystery for
How
the
did
ages.
you hear about it, like originally?
Oh, I couldn't even tell you years ago.
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of podcasts cover this.
That's what I
just
think.
'cause
I'm
it's
like,
so
I'm sure
weird.
I know they covered it on Lore and some other shows. So yeah.
Yeah. I think back when Mysterious Universe was not problematic, I think I read an article
yeah.
there.
They definitely
Remember Mysterious
talked about
Universe?
it. Yes.
I think I must have read it there for the first time because that was where I got a lot of my like weird articles to start off of.
Yeah. Well, that was a great source.
It was a great source. I really wish that it could still be a great source. So okay, the Kentucky meat shower, which by the way, I just want to start off with a quote from myself because I kept saying it as I was doing these notes. This is how you'll know I made it to heaven. When it's raining meat.
Gross.
That's how you'll know. So if you're looking for like an heirloom plopped into your hand sign that I made
steak.
it.
Yeah.
When filet mignon just rains down on people. That's how you'll know.
Oh my Christ. So when the next Kentucky meat shower occurs, it means M has gained their wings in heaven. When a filet mignon
I've
falls
gained
from
my
the
horns.
sky, and Emmethy has gained their horns. Yeah. That's exactly right.
So immediately it's weird because to me this happens in 1876. I feel like if it happened in 2024, we could say like, oh, like a butcher plane
Like
crashed. I don't know, something.
A McDonald's luncheonette
Yeah.
blew the top off the roof.
This happened on March 3rd. It is in 1876, and there is a woman named Mrs. Crouch. Already feels like a fake story. I feel like Mrs. Crouch
Sure
is
does.
like just feels like the name of a vague.
It feels like
story
something out of a Roald Dahl book.
Yeah. And Mrs. Crouch, she lives on a farm with her husband Alan. They live in Olympia Springs, Kentucky, which is exactly a 2-hour drive from Christine's house. Not to triangulate you.
Yay!
If you drive in one direction for 2 hours exactly, you will get to Christine's house.
I'll find it eventually.
Mrs. Crouch was outside one day. She is making soap in the yard, which that's the most 1876 farm thing
The
I've
most
ever heard in my life.
Kentucky thing I've ever heard. Yep.
And she noticed that the winds nearby were suggesting rain. However, the weather made it seem like the sky was pretty clear, but she kept hearing the sounds of a storm brewing.
Uh-oh.
Around noon, all of a sudden, she sees or hears, depending on the story, something falling near the house. And she looks around and she realizes that it is raining raw meat.
What the fuck? Like, I know the story, but I just still can't understand.
And in 1876, a lot of weird things haven't happened yet, you know? So
Right? Yeah, like, we haven't figured out a lot of weird shit, but, like, this one still is so fucking weird.
the meat shower lasted several minutes. And I like that gives you enough time to like wonder if you're hallucinating or not. And then you just stare and you just wait.
Several
and you're like,
minutes.
and you just look around. And you're like, is this my forever now or does it end?
And now your soap smells like meat.
Ugh. Yeah, that was like a special edition soap. That was like, do you want to smell like you want to be covered
You
in
want to
raw
smell
blood?
like
You tell me.
M? Do you want M to fall in love with you? This is my magic potion.
I promise I smell better than that. But my
know
tummy
you do.
does smell like steak for sure. So this meat shower lasted several minutes, covered their farm, or at least 100 yards by 50 yards of their farm.
Jesus. Okay.
Reportedly, enough meat rained down to, quote, fill up a wagon. Now, could
Ew!
that be one of those little red wagons that kids have, or is this like a fucking stagecoach wagon? I don't know.
I don't know, but I imagine it was the wagon they used on the farm, so...
Yeah, which was not a little kid wagon. This was a big boy wagon.
Mm-hmm.
Most pieces were 2 inches by 2 inches, so little squares.
Okay.
Not really little squares. I mean, like...
big chunks. Pretty big chunks.
And the largest piece that she saw was the length of her hand.
Ugh.
That's a full-ass... That's a fucking sirloin. That's a New York strip right there.
That's an expensive cut. Yeah.
That's at least a $30, $40 piece of meat.
And this is before cows had all these hormones, so I don't know like how these
Might have been actually
chunks...
better to eat.
Might have been. It probably was.
So it was the length of her hand was the biggest piece, and apparently the meat appeared very fresh, but it also looked very gristly.
Ew.
The first thought is that it must have been beef or venison, and she reported that it fell like snowflakes when it fell down.
Ew.
So like
okay.
I'm imagining. Oh, do your Grinch music as I imitate it floating down.
Ahu do re ahu fo re welcome.
And now there's steak
meat
everywhere.
Shower in my hands.
What if they rewrote the Grinch and the Christmas ham they ate at the end or whatever that was actually did
The
float
roast
down
beast?
that way? The roast beast.
I know way too much about the fucking. I have a problem. I know it. I know I do.
I was thinking green eggs and ham. There's a lot of meat stories that Dr. Seuss was about.
Yeah, well, there's 2, but I think you nailed it. You got them both.
Compared
No,
to
there's
other
probably more.
series for children, that's 2 more than most.
What
So.
about C.S. Lewis's The Great Meat Shower of 1873?
For a second, I was like, what? That's very on brand. So it falls like snowflakes. I don't even know physically how that can work because 2 by 2. Wouldn't it go splat?
Wouldn't it thud like hail or something instead of whatever?
In my mind, physics would work, yes. And maybe I've read the notes wrong. Maybe it's not fell like snowflakes. Maybe it felt like snowflakes. But that also doesn't make sense because
That
if you're getting
also
pummeled
seems
with heavy,
unlikely.
thick meat,
Gross.
if you're getting, as I said earlier, smashed to smithereens.
Oh, it's sick. It really is.
Okay, so is this not the most Linda thing you've ever heard in your entire life? Because
Tell me.
fresh meat is just pouring down. Her very first fucking thought of what this could be. She thought her son had been killed and dismembered on his way home and the wind was blowing him across the farm. That's my mother if I don't call her back in 5 minutes.
My God, you wrote something like in the Haunted Road Atlas or something where you said like, meanwhile, my mom like calls the National Guard if I disable Find My Friends or something, and I feel like that line alone is like so apt. I mean, wow. I mean, to be fair, as a deeply mentally ill person as well, with intrusive thoughts, my brain also would be like, great. There goes my loved ones. They're all hacked up into pieces and falling from the sky. So I'd have the same thing, but in a less...
My mom would at least text a picture of it and be like, "Is this you?" Or she'd be like, "This could be you if you don't get back to me in the next
I'd like
hour."
begin mourning already, you know. I'd be like in mourning.
She would send me a link about raining meat, and then she'd be surprised when I called back because I'm alive. She'd be amazed. She'd be like, "Oh my God, it wasn't you?"
It's like, you texted me.
Yeah, so I can't imagine this woman had to be an overprotective helicopter Jewish mom.
Yeah, I wonder. Yeah, she clearly had some intrusive thoughts as well. I feel you, girl.
You know, the son came home and was like, "You thought I was blowing across the farm in
You
chunks?
thought
What the
that
fuck is
big
wrong with you?"
prime rib was me? What are you talking about?
They must have just gotten into like a really aggressive fight or something, and it was the last time
maybe.
she'd seen her son. You know,
The guilt. Yeah,
the guilt. Anyway, when she realized it
Do you
was
think
not
for the
her
rest
son,
of their lives she would be like, I wish it was you in that fucking meat shower?
You know, the
Like
son
in
was
that-
like, I'm going to go to the bathroom. Be careful. I might rain from the sky in a second.
exactly. I feel like they're gonna like weaponize that because I was just on TikTok because I have a TikTok again. And I saw a TikTok that like referenced like a toxic marriage. And remember that what was that movie with Adam Driver
Oh,
and Scarlett Johansson?
mhm.
It was really
I
good.
don't know
The
what it's
one
called.
about their marriage falling apart, basically. But they like played a clip there where he like whips around, screams like, "Every morning I wake up and hope you're dead." And I'm like, I can just imagine that line of like, "Every morning I wake up and hope you fall from the sky in a dead meat shower."
Just tumbleweed
much
your
more-
your bloody carcass across
Yeah.
the farm.
It's much more creative that way. Just saying.
Yeah, you know, like at board games, they like make inside jokes about it, and then they have to explain to the family why mom is
When
such
they
a
get
fucking
apples
nutcase.
to apples, like the blank card, they're like, "Oh boy, here we go."
So, I guess she realized, oh, it's not my son, and still though thought it was
It's good.
an omen from God. I mean, that's almost
Sure.
better than the first thought she had.
Yeah.
And soon, neighbors who had also witnessed this from their windows, because they're like, something is raining out there, and then they're like, is that meat? Is that her
They're
son?
like, "Is that our
Hang on.
neighbor's son?" Yeah.
So they start getting real curious. You know, if I were in that neighborhood, I would have been leading the gossip pack. I would have
Boots
been
on the ground. M is out there. M is taking notes.
I'd be like, we are getting to the
extensively.
bottom of this immediately. So all the neighbors are all of a sudden showing up at the house being like, what the fuck was that? Because remember, it only rained on their farm.
That
Only.
is so weird. Okay.
So neighbors saw it from a distance, or maybe like a piece hit their house and they were like, this is fucking crazy. But everyone goes to the Crouches to be like, are you good? Like, what was that?
Like,
and
why are you
some
throwing
neighbors
steak at my window?
Some neighbors reported seeing meat hanging from the fences, and the blood of the meat was like staining the fence. They remember
Ew.
seeing the meat stuck in bushes, and they saw chunks fall hard enough from the sky to chip wood off the house, which goes against the snowflake theory, by the way.
Gee, oh yeah, yeah.
If the range's snowflakes are chipping the roof,
yeah,
it's a big
but
range.
all I can think about when it's like stuck in the bushes is like, this is Geo's dream. Like if this happens, whenever the next Kentucky meat shower happens, M and Geo are both reunited in heaven and having the best day of their lives.
We're
'Cause this is
we're
Geo's
rolling around doing
dream.
like snow meat angels, like.
Ew. And meanwhile, my window's getting fucking shattered, and I'm like, you too. I swear to God.
Yeah, it'll be if there's two showers, you'll know I got to heaven, and then the second one is when Geo passes. It'll be me letting you know, oh, he's with me now. We're good.
Oh,
Like,
don't worry. Things are about to get a lot weirder. Yeah, thanks.
So, when a reporter later asked, by the way, I'm also the reporter in this.
I
And
know
by
that.
reporter, I like to think this was actually the lead of the gossip pack who just decided they were the reporter. There's like,
You can
I'll get
always
to
say
it.
you're a reporter. Nobody can really. There's no like official badge, you know.
Well, just like the first thing this person asked the Crouches was after it started kind of clearing up, like looking back on the story, was like, what did it smell like over there?
Oh, great question.
Great question. And she said she did not smell it, which like there's no way. It's a bunch of raw
I mean,
meat
maybe
in your
not
yard.
right away. Like I would hope if it was fresh, it wouldn't smell right away. After like a day or two, I would imagine it would start to smell.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Well,
So she
pretty
said it didn't
immediately,
s-
just like how you predicted with Geo, pretty immediately the farm animals start eating the shit out of this stuff.
I'm so
How do you
happy
not?
for them. I'm so happy for them. At least they got a happy day, you know?
The Crouch's cat also started eating it, which I don't even know. The cat, like, I like to think, escaped the house the second he saw meat raining from the sky and was like, this is my...
if it's a farm, I imagine the cat did not live inside anyway. So I'm sure he
Oh,
was
that's a good
just like, what the fuck is going on?
So neighbors, again, they started coming around. Everyone's wondering how this came to be. Many of the witnesses thought it must be beef. Remember, they were thinking it's either beef or venison. Witnesses are also saying they think it's beef. But a neighbor who was an avid hunter said it is obviously bear because of its very greasy feeling, like bear.
Oh,
Fun fact: bears are
okay.
greasy, I guess.
Cool.
And
Fun
so because because all people, I don't think we've ever evolved just like the animals. The neighbors were like, should we try it?
Should we eat it? Somebody has to say it. Somebody has to say it.
Somebody had to say it. Everyone was thinking it. Someone was thinking, well, it's free meat. Maybe we should
One
try
brave soul. Yep.
And that brave soul's name was Jimmy Welch. And
Jimmy.
Jimmy! And he
Jimmy.
agreed to try the meat for $1.
Okay, this is me back then. You're the one running around like, and I'm like, will you give me $1? I'll eat it. And then they're like, no. And I'm like, fine, I'll eat it anyway. I don't need the dollar.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't care.
So I
I'll
feel like
eat
the dollar, I feel like he just ate it and then people thought he was gross and he like made up the story about the
He's
dollar.
like, no, it was a dare.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, apparently he could not even swallow it down.
Which, he ate it raw, which not
Sure did.
good. Right, that's already bad.
A local
Eating
butcher,
raw
which
bear, I don't know.
yeah, maybe raw greasy bear.
Nasty.
Which like even if I liked bear, I couldn't eat that.
like
so
raw? Yeah, no.
A local butcher, 2 different sources told me that his name was Mr. Frisbee. Okay.
Frisbee.
He was apparently the meat expert, which makes me think
Sure.
that like this is his moment, right? Like he's like I am the butcher in town and it is raining meat.
Step aside.
It's like this is his Avengers moment. He's
Oh, hell yeah.
He's like, I will save the town.
Finally, I can wear my cape.
Yeah. My apron, my cape, I'll throw it around my neck. It'll look like
Oh
a
my
cape.
God, yes, he just turns the apron around and it's just
It's the
covered
perfect
in blood.
costume. It's like Clark Kent's glasses. It's got to be something quick because you got to go into battle immediately.
Okay, the butcher superhero. That's pretty good, Em.
And Mr. Frisbee, he also tries eating it. He says that it might be deer or venison or mutton.
Okay.
He did say, and this is a quote, this is a quote from a podcast I listened to about this, that the smell was a new one.
Whoa. Okay. Wait, what's mutton? Is that
Mutton is
sheep?
lamb,
Lamb. Oh, okay.
I think.
Wow.
Sheep or
Oh,
lamb. And then venison
the
is deer.
smell is a new one. Oh God.
Which interesting because Mrs. Crouch said that she didn't smell it. And I'm like, you clearly just didn't want to smell it.
I mean,
You know
she
what
was
I'm saying?
also making soap. Maybe her nose was like diluted. You know what I mean?
It broke even. That's a great point.
Yeah, maybe they canceled each other out.
When this butcher, he took some of the meat, he pulls it apart, and when he pulled it apart, a stringy, fibrous material oozed out like milk. So he was like, I don't know what that is, but that ain't meat.
Oh, what does it mean?
A stringy, fibrous material that oozed out a milky fluid. Ugh.
That's
It's
fucking
giving
nasty.
Saltburn. So even if it wasn't meat, after a few days, it certainly began to rot like meat. And just like you said earlier, after a few days, that farm started to smell rough.
Oh.
Super bad. And I guess the smell alone, if people hadn't already witnessed the shower, if the town wasn't already talking about it, now the smell was enough to get people's attention. Reporters are coming out. Scientists are coming to collect samples for testing because they've heard that meat that's not meat is raining from the sky. Several papers, including the New York Times, wrote about the findings and possible origins of this meat rain. One scientist from Scientific American said that the sample was not meat, but it was something called Gnostic, which is a type of bacteria that's found in soil and is not actually visible at all until it's wet. So his thought, I guess what this Gnostic bacteria does, it sits on the ground, and if it rains, that water or moisture expands it into a gelatinous form with thread-like tubes, so it looks like meat because it looks like there's muscles in it. And apparently it's edible for animals. I don't know if it's edible, but animals will eat it. So
And then it'll fly across the world and rain onto you.
Yeah, the thread-like tubes turn into wings, and then it flies away.
Yeah, I was like, explain that part, buddy.
So it's this gelatinous shit that kind of, it's like those like sea monkeys where you can't see them until you put water on them.
Ugh. How do you
And all of a
spell
sudden it
that?
grows.
Gnostic. Or whatever.
Nostoc.
OC. Oh, okay.
And nicknames for this, for Gnostic, are witch's jelly, which makes sense because of the
I've
time.
heard of that. I've heard of witch's jelly.
Because it's jelly that appears out of nowhere because it has to have moisture. It's also known as star jelly. It's known as
Star
fallen
jelly.
star, which is what I call Christine when I see her shoulders. It's also called spit of the moon, and it's also called troll butter.
Ew. Okay. First of all, least favorite, troll butter. Total favorite
Immediately.
new one to me is moon spit or whatever you said. I love
Moon
that.
spit
Like
is something
the
I make when I'm working the bar ship when I do my shift at Star Tenders.
Honestly, moon spit is what you do when that one bitchy customer doesn't tip you. You're like, I'm gonna moon spit right near your fucking cocktail, you biatch. But Gnostic, the witch. I've heard of star jelly, and I've heard of
And
witch's
witch's
jelly. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I just googled it and like it looks fucking green. It doesn't really look like meat to me.
Yeah, if anything, it looks like rotten meat, not fresh meat.
Yeah, definitely doesn't look like. Ooh, it's really kind of nasty. Like I'll send a photo to the group, or at least to you.
Yeah.
There's a hydrated Gnostic commune from the Ohio State University, and we can post.
Yeah,
this
I'd
on
like to
Instagram.
know what picture you're looking at because maybe like to them, could they have excused it as like meat fat?
I mean, it
Oh,
looks almost
no.
like seaweed.
It
right?
looks like seaweed.
Yeah, and I
Interesting.
mean, to be honest, like every photo looks like that, as at least the ones I can find.
Interesting.
So I mean,
I don't.
maybe they
You
were
know how like carrots didn't used to just be orange; they had like purple and white
True.
and everything. And
cows
like
used
then
to be green.
yeah, maybe meat used to be green
I'm just
before it was rotten. Yeah, I don't know, but the main theory from Scientific American is that it was Gnostic. Maybe it was like they thought it was a different strand of Gnostic that was a different
Maybe.
color.
Maybe it changed colors because it was flying through the air. I don't know.
Because also maybe if it looked like that texture, that does look like something that would fall like snowflakes.
Really, it looks like it would splat, but I guess so would meat. So maybe.
Let me look at the picture
Yeah.
again. No, that feels like it would at least look like it kind of rained a little bit more than like a thick plummet.
Yeah, I guess you're right. Not just like one big like thud. Yeah, that's fair.
Anyway, so they thought that maybe Gnostic was on the ground. Rain made it expand, but there was no rain. This was a clear day, and the only thing that fell
Right.
from the sky was meat or this material. So that takes out the Gnostic theory because there was no water to build it out of the ground.
Right.
Other scientists said that it's not Gnostic. It is actual meat, but we don't know what kind of meat.
Well, okay, I could have said that too.
Yeah, it's like, I guess I'm a fucking scientist.
It's a mystery meat.
But so one person tried to cook it over a Bunsen burner, and it
Oh.
reportedly smelled like mutton, like rancid mutton suet. And for those who don't know, suet is like a hard raw fat. So they
Yeah.
thought like maybe it's like rotten sheep fat, lamb fat.
Okay. Yeah.
In this same experiment, or in the same, I guess, like lab, the same people who were working on the Bunsen burner thing, they also put a chemical solution over the meat material so that it would, I guess, eat some of it away so they could see closer up on the fibers and the tissues. And there were, in fact, fibers and connective tissues. So they decided, okay, so it must be meat.
Okay.
Many of the cohorts in this lab, after smelling it, say that it was definitely mutton. Which, like, is
I
this
love that
town
they're-
just riddled with mutton? Like, why does everybody know
yeah,
what
and
that
also
smells
I
like?
love that they're all just smelling. They're like the other scientists also smelled it and said it has to be. mutton.
And you know they smelled it for science. They were like, I just have to know.
right. And they got paid. They were on the clock for sure.
Some scientists agreed that it was meat but not mutton, and maybe it was just animal cartilage. And then
Yeah.
under a microscope, they said that the meat had to be either horse lung tissue or human infant lung tissue.
Oh God! It just keeps getting worse.
In the words of Bethany Watson from an Acquired Taste podcast who covered this, she said,
Did she really?
she said, apparently babies have the lungs of horses. So,
Oh, I
Which-
mean, they do seem to scream loudly and have a lot of energy. I guess I could see how that would equate. Yeah.
But it is wild. It's like it's either horse or baby lung.
Nothing
but
in between.
nothing else.
Not a pig.
So that's what they said after looking at it under a microscope. But another doctor checked out a bunch of samples and said some of them were cartilage, but one had muscular connective tissue, so it couldn't have been a lung because it was muscular.
Oh,
so
okay.
that takes away the thought that it's a horse lung or a baby lung. This guy says it's not a lung. And then the meat at this point, amongst all of the science that they were doing, it's now like rotten across the board. So
right.
people couldn't really even determine the animal of the meat if they wanted to. But now they're saying it's definitely not human. It's definitely animal meat. And it seems like because people were just taking chunks of it and bringing it. So maybe the samples were different parts of animal parts.
True. Like maybe one part's a lung, and then
one part was a lung. Someone else was like, no, it's clearly not a lung. But that was because they had a different piece of the meat.
Okay.
So that kind of takes away the theory that like it's one type of organ. Maybe it's like just the original chicken McNugget. And it's just like bits of everything.
There's a beak.
Yeah.
God.
And so this also led to the theory that maybe there was, regardless of what type of animal it was, I guess they're assuming sheep or lamb since everyone thinks it smelled like mutton the most.
Yeah.
But the thought is that some animal must have exploded in the air and his chunks were raining down on the farm. So either the animal was being hunted and the boom of the bullet like pushed them into the sky, which I don't know if they made guns that powerful back then.
Whoa.
Or there was some sort of like literal like land mine that a sheep stepped on and flew into the sky after being launched from an explosion. But this happened in like a small town on a farm. There was no fucking explosion.
And wouldn't
like
they have heard it?
Wouldn't they have heard it? And also wasn't like the main hunter there who thought it was bear. So like he would have maybe known if anyone had been shot that hard into the sky. But one of the theories is that it exploded in the sky in Raintown. One New York Times reporter claimed that the meat shower was literally a meteor shower. Where this is probably going to be your favorite theory because I like that it's called like a meteor, like meteor. That it was a literal meat shower when Earth passed through a bunch of orbiting chunks of meat. The theory comes from the fact that a meteor coming to Earth must have either hit a bunch of birds and the birds all exploded together.
What?
But we would have seen a fucking meteor, let's be clear. We would have seen a meteor.
Maybe not.
Like this. If it was close enough to the Earth's atmosphere, it's hitting pack of birds.
No, but meteors can be really small.
I guess so. But also, if a meteor is coming down from outer space and hitting birds so hard they explode, would there even be evidence of a bird anymore? But it's like, I feel like it would just be pulverized.
I will tell you one thing.
What?
There'd be a beak.
There would be a beak, and it would make it into my chicken McNugget.
Except probably the bird ate it. I mean, not the bird. Probably the dog ate it, so.
Well, the reason I say this is probably going to be your favorite theory is because that theory very quickly slipped into this theory, which is that, well, maybe a meteor hit our birds or another planet with life on it exploded and their bodies are raining down on us.
I find that a little crazy because, like, then it would be so concentrated just to that one area. Like, it seems a little bit unlikely for
I've heard about an alien coming and crashing down in a very specific part of the farm before, and that is called the birth of Clark Kent / Superman.
Oh, sure. Okay, I thought you were talking about the whatchamacallit in Kentucky, the alien.
Oh, the Kelly Hopkinsville,
yeah.
No, that's how Superman got his start. His home planet exploded and he flew down to Smallville, Kansas, and he crash landed into a farm. So
there you go.
Maybe that's what's happening here. This was just Clark Kent's like really unlucky brother, and his passage onto Earth didn't work.
He didn't have quite the same like constitution as his brother, so he kind of didn't make it past Earth's atmosphere.
So they think that there must have been another planet that exploded, and this is called the cosmic meat theory, because basically it suggests that all the meat that's raining on us is dead exploded alien flesh.
I mean, I love it.
Even if this was a legit theory, though, anything falling to Earth through the atmosphere that quickly would have been incinerated before it ever touched the ground. So that doesn't
maybe
work.
they were in a UFO and something went wrong and he fell out.
Maybe. Honestly, anything's possible at this point. So one professor thought that this was dried tadpoles that the wind spit out onto the farm, like somehow got lifted up in a
Gross.
storm and just kind of came raining down on people. And that's apparently not a weird theory, because fish and frogs have reportedly fallen from the sky several times in storms.
Yeah, raining frogs. I've heard of that.
In 1947, fish fell from the sky in Louisiana. Fish also rained in Australia in 1974, 2004, and 2010. Tadpoles have rained down in places like Japan, Hungary, the Philippines, and India. Like, a common theory is that a type of tornado called water spouts lifts the fish and frogs out of water and drops them back down. But none of that would explain literal meat or something that's not fish and tadpoles.
Yeah, you know what? I have a question which I feel like might be dumb because you might have already kind of made it clear, but was there any fur on these pieces?
One source I read said that somebody claimed that they saw wool, which would confirm mutton. But like, don't you have to make wool, or you have to?
No,
I guess it would. I guess it would
sheep.
technically be right attached on top of it, right?
It would just be like it's
Like a patch
hair,
of fur,
yeah.
essentially. Yeah. Someone said that they thought they saw wool, which would confirm mutton, but we don't really know if that was them. Just like no one else saw
I would just
it.
think like if a cow exploded or something, you'd see so much like hair and like hoof and like
I
other
know.
pieces of it, you know?
Yeah.
Bones. What about bones? Hold on.
What about a face? Shouldn't there be like a face, an eye, a brain? And that also makes me think, by the way, if it was gelatinous matter, could it be raw brain?
I guess, but wouldn't it have to be a lot because one of them was like the
guess so,
size of
yeah.
her hand?
Yeah.
Like, do you know how
it'd
much
be like a
of
whole
it
temporal
fell?
lobe.
They
Yeah.
said a whole wagon full, right? That's a big old brain.
Right. That's a brain as big as mine. I'll tell you that.
Oh boy, it's hard to find, but there we go. We did it.
We do exist. We keep it hidden, but
Oh,
we do
man.
exist. Yeah. It makes this truly just makes no sense. I mean, even none of that, even like the fish and the tadpoles thing, it wouldn't explain a meat shower, especially when the only way that fish and tadpoles would have gotten there is if rain had happened, but there was no rain. It was a clear sky. Some people, like the Crouches, who were good Christians, although I would argue that mom sounded very Jewish with her complete weird-ass fear.
Yeah.
They thought that this must be an omen. A lot of neighbors thought it too. I mean, meat raining down from the sky, even if it's frogs.
Yeah, it sounds like a plague, like one of the 10 plagues.
Apocalyptic, yeah.
Yes.
So, but then people were like, why would God decide that he's going to rain down meat on one Christian farm for like 5 minutes? And that's it.
Because you done fucked up and you know what you did, Mrs. Crouch. I don't know.
That's when like all of a sudden you like rethink your every single step from that day and you're like, what did I do? It must have like, it was clearly a temporary oopsie daisy because I only got temporarily
I did fall asleep
punished.
during my evening prayers. Maybe that's why he's so mad.
You know what I kind of like about this, like that one of the plagues, that like the raining meat or raining frogs or whatever, is that it's not really, and I'm talking completely out of my ass, I'm sure there's a whole biblical context to this, but from what I know of like raining frogs or raining meat or whatever it is, it's just not even a plague that's really that bad. It's just wildly inconvenient. It's just God being like, I'm going to give you something that to think about, and it's going to really suck.
As someone who has studied this as part of my Catholic upbringing, I think
Tell
I
me.
could step in here and say it was pretty damn bad. Because
Was it
according
more
to
than
the
just
book of-
raining frogs? What happened?
Yeah, oh, sure, yeah. So here we go. This is from the biomedicalscientist.net. This is just like a summation of some of the things that happened. The waters returned to blood, the fish in
Oh
the
my.
river died, and the Egyptians couldn't drink the foul water. Frogs swarmed forth, covering every inch of land and entering houses and bedrooms. All over Egypt, bugs crawled forth from the dust to cover the land. And that's just a couple of them.
So the blood water is crazy. Then the not being able to drink, that's obviously the worst part of it because everything else is just infestations, right?
Well, no, because then they killed the firstborn Egyptian sons, right? So they
You're
all
saying
died,
right as
and-
if I know. No, I don't know. They killed the
Oh,
firstborn
okay.
Egyptian
Well,
sons.
it is Old Testament, so I don't know. I thought maybe you'd know. Hordes of wild animals destroyed everything in their path. A fatal pestilence killed most of the domestic animals. The pharaoh, his servants, all their animals developed painful boils all over their body. Hail struck down all the crops in the fields, shattered every tree. The locusts covered up the land and swallowed up every crop and all the fruits. Thick darkness over the land of Egypt, so total that the Egyptians had to feel their way around, couldn't see. And then, of course, the final was all firstborn Egyptian sons died. And the Israelites had to mark lamb's blood above the door to be passed over in the plague.
Do we know what the time gap was between all of these? Like, was it all at once?
Yeah.
Like, that's so overwhelming.
No, they were kind of like back. I think they were kind of consecutive. You know what I mean?
I do remember
how long
hearing.
did the 10 plagues take?
Yeah, I do remember hearing about the boils. This is someone who's so removed from religion. All I got from that was that God sounds like a real asshole. That's
Well, yeah,
what
that's Old Testament for you, baby.
I don't. Okay, that's all.
That's the whole
that's all
thing. And then in the New Testament, Jesus shows up, and suddenly God's like, oopsies, I was kind of mean to you all.
that's kind of like a guy who's like kind of a dirtbag, and he's like, but now I've got a son. I've got to really get my change my game up. You know?
Yeah, it's like a toxic. Yeah, it's definitely very toxic. But it says we can feel comfortable. I don't feel comfortable about any of this, but sure. This is by thebiblehistoryguy.com. We can feel comfortable with a probable maximum time frame between February 1st and March 22nd, 1446 BC.
Well, tomorrow's February 1st. Happy anniversary. That sounds
Don't
awful.
leave the house.
Like as an understatement, obviously, but like, no comment. No comment. I never.
Anyway,
no comment.
so yeah, so it was bad. It was bad.
Okay, got it. So it was not just like a couple frogs. It wasn't like PetSmart
No.
had a broken tank. Okay.
They got sucked up into the filter and just like launched. And
Well,
they're like, it's a plague. It's like there's 4 frogs. It's okay.
that would feel like a plague to me. That alone,
I
I'd
know,
be like,
we
God,
would
you don't have to do all
probably-
this like fucking dramatic shit.
Well, and
Just
think
like,
about it. That happened in 1440. By this time, you and I would have turned it into the biggest like deal. We would have multiplied the number of frogs by like 40,000. Been like, no, you don't understand. Like,
I'd be like, I
there
was
were
crawling
frogs
through
everywhere.
mountains of frogs uphill
Yeah.
both ways to get to school.
We just couldn't see. This is how we would like turn a story into something completely ridiculous.
That's why we're the leaders of the gossip pack.
That's
but
right.
Yeah, that all sounds like truly. And again, I know I just said it, but it really does make me like wonder. I'm like, why was God doing all that? Because all he had to do was half of that, and I would have gotten the hint. But whatever.
Well,
This is
he had to
also coming
punish
from
the
someone who didn't.
Egyptians.
This is
It's
coming from
your
someone who did not read the Bible.
Your peoples had to be saved, you know,
Oh, I know it.
from
I still do.
Pharaoh.
So
Yeah, I know.
save
Don't
me.
remind me.
Because they thought this was an omen, they were like, maybe this is God, but they also thought maybe this was going to be a hoax. Like maybe the Crouches were just like fucking bored on the farm and threw some meat in the air. And
What a wild prank, but okay.
how silly. Also, but how
Mm.
bored must you be in 1876? There's no TikTok. You know, it's like, well, I guess
mean,
I
and
should go
also,
throw
like,
some meat around.
Yeah, I mean, she seemed like she was
Scraps.
busy making soap, but okay.
Well, wasn't soap made with lard?
Wait
Like,
a minute. Yes, with lye, right?
did we just
or-
crack the case?
Hold on. How to make soap? Wait, what
With
is
fat.
lye? Hold on. Lye is fat, right? No. No. Lie's not. Sorry. What is soap? What
There's
is
some
old
soap was not
made of?
vegan. Soap was not vegan
Uh,
back then.
No, yeah. So you're right. The fat rendered from a slaughtered cow, sheep, or goat. So I knew this soap had something to do with something.
And this isn't one of the theories I'm going to say. I think we just discovered it. I think she just had scraps
so.
of soap, and she was like, I don't want to do anything. Woo! And she just threw the bucket over her shoulder.
I don't think she did it on purpose. I think she was too embarrassed to admit it. I think something weird happened, and she was like, I don't know what it is.
Yeah. But smell my soap.
I totally
yeah.
do. Something happened, and I
Interesting.
think somebody's not telling the truth.
Speaking of old women, I just want to say I was on the plane yesterday coming home, and it was a 2-hour flight, and I feel so bad for the person sitting next to this older woman on the plane. As the plane landed, I heard behind me an old woman say, "Anyway, that's the story of my life."
Oh my lord! Oh my lord!
And then you looked over and you saw the guy sitting next to her. It just looked like he had was just just fried from having to engage for 2 hours with somebody.
God. That's my nightmare. Not being able to. I mean, at least it's a nice old lady. I've been in worse social situations, but doofa. If you just want to take a nap.
Anyway, maybe she needed a Ms. Crouch to sit on the farm and make soap with and just talk forever, but
maybe
this poor guy was not there for it.
You know?
Okay, so it could have been a hoax. There was talk that maybe Mrs. Crouch wanted to move, but Mr. Crouch didn't, and so maybe she was trying to cause problems so that they would leave. But that feels like a really stupid way to do it, of just sprinkling meat all over the floor.
Yeah,
could do anything else.
Odd. Yeah.
But even though it could have been a hoax, another reason that it wasn't is because the entire town swears that they were good upstanding people who weren't big pranksters like that. And also only a few reporters came to town, but other than that, it wasn't a huge spectacle. They never made any money off of it. Mrs. Crouch never even gave her first fucking name, so it's not like she was getting something from this.
Seeking attention, right.
But here's a theory I love. Apparently there's a thought that maybe the meat comes from 2 brothers who got into a knife fight, and then they got picked up by a fucking tornado, and then they were thrown across the farm, just like Ms. Crouch thought happened with her own son.
But so were they dead? Did anybody?
Exactly. I was like, are there any crime reports of missing brothers who were last seen in the sky fighting with
fight?
Yeah.
If they both ended up whatever. Yeah, okay.
A lot of information's missing there.
That's wild.
Here's my other personal favorite. I think this is my top favorite theory.
Okay.
Not because it's accurate, but because it's just so silly. Apparently, one big theory out there was that a hot air balloon enthusiast who had his own hot air balloon was just passing through above the farm and accidentally dropped his lunch out of the basket.
His picnic! Oh my god!
And apparently his lunch was 100 by 50 yards of raw meat.
But on a hot air balloon, they got that little flame. Talk about a Bunsen burner.
Oh,
maybe he
that's
was doing
genius.
a little fondue.
He was making a functional decision.
Yeah.
Work smarter, not harder.
It's like a
why
Korean
barbecue
in the
tonight
sky.
when I can just cook it on the fly?
On the fly in the sky, Korean barbecue, here we come. I mean, I think they're onto something with that one.
That's what I'm saying. And then the most popular theory and the most accepted theory is that you got to get your little book out about what this group of birds is.
Oh, yeah.
But a flock of vultures, which apparently is...
I do know that one. Oh,
you do
know it?
I think I do. There's 2 words for it. There's a committee of vultures, and there's also a wake, which very funeral.
Oh, a wake. That's good.
A popular accepted theory.
Apparently in flight, they are called a kettle.
Oh, okay. Well, they were in flight. So a kettle of vultures, the theory is that they puked as they passed overhead. That's the main theory.
Oh, shit.
Fun fact, when threatened, a wake of vultures will projectile vomit towards predators to make a faster getaway. One, because the vomit is heavily acidic, so it might hurt them, theoretically, hurt the predator. But also they're emptying their stomachs, so they will be lighter and they can take off quicker. Maybe
makes so much sense.
So maybe they were all threatened by something and they had a delay in their puking. Maybe they just took off. And then once they were in the sky, they decided that now's the time to throw up. That's the weird part, is that they don't ever really throw up in the air. So But the thought is like maybe, again, this
What
is
if they
from
were
an
up in a
acquired taste.
tree?
Hmm?
What if they were up in a tree and something like
Maybe.
startled them? I don't know.
Maybe. In an
Huh.
acquired taste podcast, they said like maybe it was like a classic, like if you puke, I'll puke. Like,
Yeah, exactly.
maybe-
like one of them was like, "Wait, oh."
so maybe one of them had like they reflexed. They all reflexively threw up together after one got sick or something.
Oh.
And so that would explain the random chunks of different types of meat. Like all the samples were different meat, and vultures are known to eat all the scraps. And that does mean that all the people were literally eating raw turkey puke.
Wow.
But anything
Vulture
for a
puke,
dollar,
thank
right, Jimmy
you.
Welch? Yeah.
Jimmy's that dollar better be worth.
But here's the other
Oh,
problem. To
gosh.
produce that much meat, there had to have been a lot of vultures, and Ms. Crouch said that the
Right.
sky was empty. So
Yeah, she would
also,
have probably seen that.
she would have seen at least a flock of birds, and maybe her first thought would have then been, oh, one of the birds must have died, and that's what all the meat came from. I don't know. But
So weird.
vultures also vomit as a defense mechanism, not just to randomly puke in the sky
Right.
away from predators. So it really doesn't make sense why they'd be throwing up there. But then someone came up with a great point that a lot of farmers at the time would, if they had leftover meat, which would have been often sheep meat or mutton, if they ever had leftover raw sheep meat, they would poison it and leave it in the fields to lure in and kill coyotes. So maybe vultures ate some of the poisoned sheep meat in a field, took off, and then all got sick together and threw up right over the farm.
Oh my God.
Which then means that poor Jimmy Welch for $1 was eating raw poisoned sheep meat from
Poisoned
the
meat.
inside of a vulture.
Holy, from like the stomach acid bile of a vulture. Oh,
Yes. And then reportedly 9 days after this meat shower, the same thing happened in London, also with minimal explanation. So it's happened more than once. And then
how long after?
9 days later.
What? That's weird.
That's weird. And the last fun fact I'm going to leave you on, because you're only 90 minutes from here, Christine. If you visit Transylvania University in Lexington, they still have a piece of the meat preserved in their lab from the meat shower.
No. Wait till I tell you when Blaze and I went down a rabbit hole about Transylvania, because we learned so much about their mascot, and they changed the mascot. It's a whole thing.
What did they change it from and to?
Okay. Let me pull up the correct information so I don't misspeak.
Uh-huh.
The Transylvania school mascot is a bat, right?
Obviously.
Yeah. So it's
Obviously.
a bat. But okay, hold on.
Okay.
Sorry, poor Blaze is like you're telling it all wrong. It's a bat called Raff, because it's a type of bat that is like native to this area.
Okay.
But they used to be the pioneers, and then students were like, "Fuck no,
Mm-hmm.
pioneers aren't cool anymore."
Exactly right.
'Cause
If you're going to go
fuck
to
the
Transylvania, well, also, if you're going to be in Transylvania University, you better have a Dracula themed. The fact that
Yeah,
it's not
so
a
it's a
vampire
bat.
bat pisses me off.
That's what Blaze got all upset about. And I said, vampire bats are not native to the area. It wouldn't be correct.
Who cares?
I care.
You're wrong.
Yeah.
It has to be a
I'm
vampire bat. It's
actually-
Transylvania University.
I'm actually not wrong.
And also, it'd be great. I would love it if their math professor calls himself the Count. That would be really special.
Yeah. So anyway.
Is that it? That's the whole rabbit hole? I thought we were going
I don't
through
know. We went through an entire road trip about this, and we got into a big heated discussion about the type of bat. And at this point, I don't totally feel like
you don't feel safe to discuss. I understand.
I just don't remember enough, to be honest.
Okay. Well,
yeah.
I side with Blaze. Whatever he said, I side with. But
Oh, great.
anyway, that's
Okay.
the last fun fact. That is the Kentucky meat shower.
And that was the wildest thing I've ever heard. Oh, but they're still called the Pioneers. That's what's happening. They're called the Pioneers, but their logo, their mascot, is no longer a pioneer.
Question
Here. Yes.
for you. I'll
Yep.
ask you, actually, well, this is the first question. Then I'll ask you a backup question if it's easier to answer, because it's one of my favorite things to ask people on like a friend date. What
Oh God.
if you relax, by the way, okay, with your oh my gods. What
You're not being a very good friend date. Jeez.
I'm bullying you a little bit, but I'm okay with it.
Yeah.
If you had to pick a mascot, like let's say like you like ran a school and you got to pick the mascot at all, what would the mascot be? Second question, which maybe if it's easier for you to answer. If you were to be a superhero or like be like create your own sports team, what would the colors be? I guess if you were a high school, what would the mascot and colors be?
The Wildcats
Yeah.
in Salt Lake City. No. Wow, you have asked me this before, and I remember you made a really rude face at my answer. So,
What'd you say?
trying to-
Beige?
no, I said like a cool olive green or like a maroon, and then you
I
got
did
all
say
weird
something
about it.
I have a weird personal offense to
I
olive
love a
green.
muted color. I don't know, Em. It feels very on the spot. What's your answer?
That's okay. I don't have an answer. That's why I like to ask. So it's not wrong to not have an answer. But I'd
Okay,
like
I'm
to
gonna
think
about it.
I think if it were a sports team, I don't know why I make it sports team, but I think about like the jerseys and how like a lot of times the outfit is just white, but it's got like little pops of some colors. That's easier for me to swallow. And it would obviously be my favorite contrast of the dark purple neon green.
Sure, yeah, and it'd be glow in the dark, obviously.
Obviously, some sort of ectoplasm, ghostly thing. But I don't know what it would. Maybe it'd be the phantoms.
Yeah, I was gonna say I don't think you would pick an animal.
Mm-mm.
Yours would be more like the phantoms. That's good, Em.
Thank you. Okay,
Yeah.
you don't have to have an answer right now, but some
I'm gonna
food
think
for thought
about it.
later. Next time you're in a
I
car
like
with
it.
Blaze.
I like it. Okay, so do you remember what I'm covering today?
Oh my God, it was a two-parter. Oh,
Sure was.
Christine.
How long has it been? Days.
It's been a while.
It's been a while.
Oh.
So I'm going to do the part 2 of William Heirens, aka the Lipstick Killer.
Oh, yes. Can you do a previously on?
Okay, previously on, the fella named William George Heirens, he grew up having some bad hobbies, which was petty theft.
Yes,
then-
yes.
He went to college and started ballroom dancing.
Yes. Okay, it's coming back. Yes.
But then he was struggling and he had some very weird holdups about sex, according to one source. And then he began stealing again to, like, I don't know, feel better. I have no idea. He just couldn't help himself. So he started stealing again. And he was on his way to a date and he was supposed to go to the post office to cash some money, a bond or something he had stolen, but the bank or the post office was closed. So then on the way back, he decided to rob somebody for money to pay for the date, and that is when he was caught. Yeah,
and then didn't at some point didn't he when he killed somebody he wrote in lipstick like please save me, I can't stop, or something like that.
Okay, so meanwhile, as his life is unfolding, because we're doing sort of like a cut to, okay? So meanwhile, as this is unfolding, the first victim was found with, I believe, a pillowcase over her head, a lot of stab wounds, and nothing had been stolen, and her wounds had been taped shut.
Yes, I remember that. Okay.
And then another victim, Frances, was wrapped. Her head had been wrapped in towels, and she had been stabbed in the neck. And a bullet wound was found in her head, but just like Josie's case, nothing was stolen. Except this time, there was, for one thing, a bloody fingerprint smudge on the door jamb of the apartment. And the most notable one, as you mentioned, was written in lipstick across a wall, the following words: "For heaven's sake, catch me before I kill more. I cannot control myself."
There it is.
And papers dubbed the culprit the Lipstick Killer. And of course, this is post-World War II. People are so over talking about, all the depressing state of the world, and they just go into a frenzy about this story. And they finally arrest him. They arrest Bill. and he is, or William Heirens, aka Bill, and he has been stealing. He's going to the date. He's stealing something. He gets caught. He pulls a weapon, and he is one officer who was on break, like smashed a bunch of like Acme. We said like Acme flower pots over his head, and then he was arrested. And he happened to be in the Degnan's neighborhood where, and this is the most upsetting, not most upsetting, but like one of the most notorious crimes that took place in this sort of spree was the murder of a 6-year-old girl named Suzanne, who had been found dismembered. Do you recall that at all?
Yes.
And she was found dismembered. Her body was found in several drainage sites, and the killer had left a note with a ransom demand. And so basically what happened is that William Heirens' Bill was arrested in the same neighborhood as the one Suzanne went missing in.
Mm-hmm.
And so they said, this must be our guy.
Okay. Great previously on.
Sorry, I was scrolling through, like trying to.
I know. I put you on the spot there. I didn't mean to.
No, it's okay. I mean, I should know, but trying to find the most important parts. Okay, so now we're on to part 2. After Bill's arrest, he was taken to the hospital, and as you recall, he had been smashed in the head with several flower pots, so he had a head wound that required stitches. And he was in bad shape. He was exhausted, in pain, heavily medicated, probably confused, I would argue, just about how frantic everything happened. And although it's unconfirmed, it's assumed, and it's very likely that he had a concussion.
Mm-hmm.
So he continually slipped in and out of consciousness, but a detective told reporters that he suspected Bill was pretending to be this sick to avoid questioning.
Okay.
But whether he was pretending or not, police decided to interrogate him anyway without any representation present. And they accused Bill of the notorious lipstick murders. Oh, and remember there was that other guy that they aggressively interrogated and beat up, and then they had to pay his hospital bill, and he had to leave town. Yeah. And he just happened to be a custodian in Suzanne's building. So like
these
they already
cops really
have
they're very happy to just do whatever the fuck they want, huh?
Talk about like, it's like trigger happy, but like, I don't know, interrogation happy. I have no idea what the right word is, but yeah. So they already have like a bad track record. So they decide to interrogate him without any representation present, and they accuse him of the notorious lipstick murders as well as the brutal killing and dismemberment of 6-year-old Suzanne Degnan. And their only evidence at the moment, like I said, was that Bill was burglarizing an apartment near Suzanne's home. So that was it.
Okay.
Like there was literally no other connection except that he was in the same neighborhood. So for 6 days, Bill was denied access to a lawyer. But not only that, he was also denied food and water.
Oh my God. For 6 days.
Torture. Yep.
Oh my God.
He was beaten, and at one point, his testicles were allegedly burned chemically
What?
to try and coerce a confession.
Wow.
The thing that I can't get over, that the first time I heard, I really wish I had never heard it, is that he received also a spinal tap without anesthesia. And you know about my spine thing.
I do, on top of just people's general spine thing. Oh my God.
Did I ever tell you about my spinal tap? Which I did, I think, but it was so bad.
Sure did.
And then
that was one of the
turns
first.
out the doctor was blind.
Yep. That was one of the first, I think, traumas you ever shared with me, and because it happened in real time.
And I had I've always my whole life had a really deep-seated fear about spines, and then I start to wonder, like, did I know this was going to happen? You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, it almost like
it's like Natalie Wood knowing to be scared of water.
Yes. Oh my gosh, it's the same kind of idea. Like, is there some weird, like, deep down, knowing about it?
Yeah.
Anyway, so he was given a spinal tap without anesthesia, apparently to like test for something, but like it didn't really make sense. Like the explanation they gave for why they allegedly had to do a spinal tap like didn't really match up with any sort of scientific basis. And shortly after this spinal tap, they tried to do a polygraph test, but he was in too much pain to participate, so they gave up.
Oh my god. Oh my god. It's
I'd
hard to
also-
hear. It's hard to
I'd
hear.
also like to give you the little reminder that at this point he's still 17, so he's a minor.
Good. Noted.
Yeah.
Noted.
Yeah. So police give him a dose of sodium pentothal. Do you know what that is?
I don't want to know.
It's considered the truth serum. It's sort of
okay.
a chemical that's meant to lower your inhibitions and
Does it actually
allegedly
work?
like so I think it is supposed to inhibit your brain from being able to lie, but like the science has not really confirmed it. It's like pseudoscience a bit. And
Okay.
I mean, for all we know, it just makes you like kind of out of it and woozy, and maybe you're not like as quick on your feet, and you can't
Sure.
keep your
Like
story
drunk. It
straight,
just makes you
right?
drunk.
Like, yeah, maybe it just makes you drunk.
Is it just they're just shooting vodka into your neck?
I wish that probably would have been a lot better, honestly. Yeah, so they give him a dose of sodium pentothal without his consent or his parents, remember, because he's a minor.
Oh.
And he has not been able to access his parents for several days. He's been denied access. And sodium
Are his parents
pentothal
not sorry? Are his parents not wondering where the fuck he is?
Well, he was at college, so it's
Oh,
only
right.
been a couple days. I imagine, like back then,
They
you're
don't
not
even know.
texting.
Oh my god. Okay, sorry for
So-
interrupting you.
No, it's okay. So to answer your question, sodium pentothal is an anesthetic medication, and it's sometimes called truth serum, and it's been used historically to make people more compliant in interrogations. And the theory, quote unquote, is that it inhibits the part of the brain that allows people to lie. But again, it's sort of a pseudoscience. In actuality, people dosed with sodium pentothal might be more susceptible to suggestion. So even though your inhibitions are lowered, that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to tell the truth. It might just mean you'll agree with what you're being told as the truth. Like you'll just go along with the story, right? So at this point, they're clearly trying to create this narrative. And, the idea is people who have been dosed with this sodium pentothal might be more susceptible to suggestion, therefore confessions or testimonies made while under the influence of it. And so these testimonies are not very reliable and, raise a bunch of red flags. But while drugged, Bill allegedly implicated someone else in the crimes. Like he said, I didn't do it, someone else did it. And they said, oh, yeah? Who? And he gave a name that sounded like Merman, Harry
Okay.
Merman, something like that.
Okay.
And they said, oh, yeah, who's that? And investigators said, is that your alter ego? And apparently Bill just seemed to agree that it was possible. But remember, he's been like tortured for days
And drugged and starving
drugged.
and
also deprived of sleep, which I forgot to mention.
which is definitely torture.
Yes, and has also proven to be more damaging than like being drunk, or like more inebriating than being drunk.
And also, I feel like him like alluding to the answer being yes, he could have just said nothing. He could have just gone and like that could have been
exactly,
a
like
fucking yes.
made a noise that they said was a confirmation. Exactly.
Ugh.
So he mumbled something. It sounded like Merman. And then when the press got a hold of this, these fucking dummies, I'm sorry, they interpreted this as, they're like, Merman sounds like murder man. And so
for fuck's sake.
I know, it's not even clever. And so they basically created this, like the press created this narrative that Bill's alter ego was this murder man, bloodthirsty personality, like his, weird villain version of himself.
Yeah.
It just totally went out of control. And when he finally underwent a polygraph test, the results were inconclusive, which we know polygraphs are not allowed as evidence in court for a reason.
Mhm.
So police even brought Bill to the crime scenes to try and restage the murders and let the press come to like watch and take photos.
Wild. Okay.
He was so
Wow.
basically the whole world's against him at this point. He was finally transported to the Cook County Jail Infirmary on July 2nd, And just like that custodian previously arrested for the same crime, Hector, Bill had to recover from these injuries he sustained during the interrogation. I mean, they're literally putting needles in his spine. Like he's being tortured. However, unlike their interrogation with Hector, they knew they had to make this one stick, these charges stick. And so they were like, we're not letting this one get away. So the arrest took the heat off their most recent suspect in the case, who was a guy named Richard Thomas, and he was one that the police had been eyeing. Richard Thomas was a nurse from Chicago, and although he had recently moved to Phoenix, Arizona, he was actually in Chicago when Suzanne Degnan was kidnapped and murdered. And when police arrived in Arizona to question him, he was facing jail time for another crime. He had actually been arrested for molesting his 13-year-old daughter.
Oh, holy shit. Okay. Wow.
Yep. Some sources say it was his niece. The original newspaper source from 1946 says it's his daughter. Either way, it was a young girl. He had also been charged for crimes like extortion and writing notes to threaten people. Remember the ransom note?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
A handwriting expert with the Phoenix police had seen the Suzanne Degnan ransom note and was like, hey, that looks a lot like that guy Thomas's handwriting. And thought it was so similar that he called Chicago police to like say, I think this might be your guy. Richard also frequented a car yard across the street from where Suzanne's remains had been found.
Oh, shit. Okay.
And like I said, he was in Chicago at the time of her murder.
Mm-hmm.
He often carried surgical instruments with him, even though he was a nurse, and bragged to people that he was a surgeon, even though he was a nurse.
Oh, okay.
Investigators, like, I don't know how else to say it except he's lying. Investigators believed he had the anatomical knowledge to have dismembered Suzanne, or could have at least researched it in his weird understanding of himself as a surgeon, which is something Bill, who was 17 and like knew how to play chess and ballroom dance, like didn't know about how a spine is disarticulated. You know what I mean? Like that's not something Bill would necessarily have known.
Okay.
So in questioning, Richard actually admitted, like the nurse who was being, a person of interest, he admitted to killing this little girl. But then when they arrested Bill, Chicago police called Phoenix police and said, oh, never mind. He didn't do it. We got the real guy. So Richard was like, yeah, you're right. It wasn't me. It was that other guy.
Yeah, obviously. Well, actually, no.
Fuck? Somebody already, like, that was his luckiest goddamn break. I mean, I can't. So, of course, he recants his confession.
Is there a reason behind it? Like, is there a reason why someone else said it?
What do you mean?
Like, why, like, he just, it was his lucky break because somebody else admitted to it? Is that what you're saying?
No, so they arrested Bill. Well, okay.
Oh, sorry. This is where my brain did a flip.
It's okay. So Richard is the nurse from Chicago who at first was being looked at as as the killer. And he confessed that he did it.
Right.
But then this whole arrest with the flower pots and the torture of this young kid named Bill, who happened to be burglarizing somebody in Suzanne's neighborhood, happens, and they coerce a confession out of him. Right. So they call back to the other police, say, oh, never mind. That guy Richard didn't do it, even though he said he did.
Oh, I thought they finally got Bill to actually confess under distress, and that was...
Oh, I mean, they sort of did. Like, they
kind of.
The Merman thing where he said, oh, it's another alter ego of mine, but in reality, like, he was doped up on sodium pentothal.
That's still an incredibly lucky move that they just decided to go with the person that they've been torturing. Yeah.
Right? Like, for that Richard guy who literally said, who, as far as I'm concerned, did it, and who admitted to doing it, and then all of a sudden police are like, oh, never mind, you're off the hook.
I don't know why you would...
It's
why
just
wouldn't
crazy.
Do you think at all... This is just a random thought, but do you think if you're going with... The two options are somebody admits to it, and there's somebody who hasn't totally admitted to it, but you tortured. Like, I feel like they almost maybe even thought for a second that Richard was the guy who did it, but they needed to be able to like justify why they tortured this guy, and they were like,
yeah. And that's definitely one of the theories is like they were in too deep with this new, because they'd already gotten in so much trouble, not really so much trouble, but they'd already fucked up with Hector and tortured him and then had to let him go and ruined his life and paid a $20,000 hospital bill. So they were like, we have to make this one stick. Like, this one has to be it, especially now that they've tortured him, stuck needles in his spine. Like, oh, well, if he killed a 6-year-old, then it doesn't really matter that we did all that, you know? So, yeah, I think that is kind of the theory, is like they just went with it, you know, and decided to believe it was Bill and not Richard. And so it's just so baffling. But yeah, Richard was like, yeah, you're right. It wasn't me after all. So, you know, he was just off the hook, and police decided Bill was guilty, and they thought, let's build a case against him. So they searched his room, and of course, that's where they found thousands of dollars of stolen goods and bonds, you know, things he had stolen from people. They even found a surgical tool set among the many stolen items. And you know, that could have been damning evidence. However, one detective did tell reporters that there was no evidence it had ever been used, that it seemed to be just brand new.
Okay.
So investigators determined there was a 9-point match between Bill's fingerprints and the print on the ransom note. And I don't know if you've seen, like, when they do fingerprint analysis with, like, the different dots, you know, to, like, pinpoint. So there's no standard in the U.S. as to how many points must align to confirm a match beyond, you know, beyond doubt. But some departments do accept a 9-point match. However, many require at least a 12-point match.
Okay.
And in places like England and France, they require up to 16 and 17-point matches, and 9 would never be conclusive.
Wow. Okay.
But we're in 1946 Chicago, and they want him to be guilty, and 9 points was considered close enough. So it's permissible evidence. And initially, a forensics expert actually ruled Bill out in the Frances Brown case. She was one of the women that was found with her head covered, declaring his fingerprints didn't match the print on the door jamb. Remember when it was the one with the lipstick on the wall and there was a bloody fingerprint. But later, a different expert came forward and said, actually, it does match Bill's fingerprint. So they just, like, found a new guy to say it does, you know?
Great.
Like, they can just create their own evidence.
Cute.
Here. Like, it's just cute, right? Yeah. And then, of course, police, to answer your question, received their confession, because after several days of interrogation, Bill finally just
gave in
to basically make the torture stop.
Yeah.
Agreed to plead guilty. Yeah. Because, like, I mean, I don't think I would have ever even lasted that long. Right? Like,
no, I would have been like, all right, I did it. Like, just don't.
Especially at 17. Like, get a needle out of my spine, you know? Like, what the fuck?
Call my mom. Like, I'd be like,
call my mom. I'll say whatever you want me to say.
I don't know how this was even, like, legally, I don't know what the right words are, but, like, in today's world, that would have been pulled right out, right? Of like, oh, well, the confession was taken under duress. I mean,
there's still quite a few coerced confession cases out there that people are fighting, you know.
But, like, one so drastically, like spinal taps and starvation and not letting you call your mom. And I
mean, I think especially with the not letting especially as a minor, I think, and especially not allowing you to evoke your attorney rights and parental rights, I think, or your rights to see your parents, I think that probably today would be, like,
thrown out.
Huge no-go. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I know that there are cases of, you know, keeping people and not letting them get a lawyer, but I think especially with camera evidence nowadays, it's a lot harder to pull that off without consequences. Sure. Like, you can watch videotapes. Like, did you ever watch Making a Murderer, which was, like, one of the first
probably. It was so long ago now.
Oh God, it was when I was in Glendale, so it must have been like 2016. But it was like one of the first, like, true crime docuseries that came out, like, before the big, you know, boom of them. But that was kind of the whole story, was that his case was predicated on, like, he was almost tricked. Some people believe he was tricked into confessing to something he didn't do. And so, you know, I think this thing kind of still happens, like the manipulation and the coercion and yeah. But you're probably right that a spinal tap might not fly.
I feel like it could not be admissible in court to have, like, a minor being fully tortured on his balls. Like, oh my God. Like,
yeah, chemically burning his scrotum. And like, I'm not saying things like that don't happen anymore. I'm just saying I think you're right that like it wouldn't be as widely accepted maybe nowadays.
it was almost 100 years ago, so it does feel very Wild West.
Which is crazy to think about. Yeah, it's crazy to think this was like 80 years ago. But yeah, so God, it's horrible. So his lawyers and even his parents insisted he sign a confession and enter the plea in exchange for a single life sentence. So even his parents were like, just enter a plea, say you did it, just to like make sure you're not put to death, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So Bill agreed. He wrote a confession for all 3 murders, and he later claimed that he actually used an article from the Chicago Tribune to add details to make his account realistic, because he didn't know the details, because he didn't do them, according to him. But when he went to the courthouse to enter his plea on July 30th, he pled innocent. He said, I recant my confession. And prosecutors were fucking pissed.
I bet.
They said, okay, you know what? You're going to play games with us. Now we're sticking you with 3 life sentences for all 3 murders.
Holy shit. Oh my God.
Yeah, he's playing a dangerous game here. Bill claimed he feared for his life. If he didn't accept these terms, he would face the death sentence, and he was convinced the media had made it impossible for him to get a fair trial. So he basically just said, fine, I'll plead guilty this time, and I'll accept your terms. So prosecutors and investigators were like, okay, easy, open and shut, black and white. Good job, guys.
Yeah.
And regardless of whether Bill did murder Suzanne and Francis, they actually had no evidence whatsoever linking him to Josephine Ross' crime scene, which is the one they said that his fingerprint was on, but like that wasn't even true.
Wow,
so there was no trial, only a sentencing. The first day of the sentence hearing was very long, and the victim's family members were present.
Okay.
And Josie's daughter was there, who believed Bill was innocent of her mother's murder.
Finally, someone.
Like, right? I mean, Jesus. She told the press, I cannot believe that young Heirens murdered my mother. He just does not fit into the picture of my mother's death. I have looked at all the things Heirens stole, and there was nothing of my mother's things among them. And his whole thing was petty theft. He just took little trinkets and items, and she looked at every single thing and said, not one of these is my mom's.
So,
it wouldn't make sense he would go murder her and not steal anything and then just go on stealing from people. It just doesn't make sense.
I call that a slam dunk of like defense of like none of the, like, I am the child of this mother. I know my mother. I know my mother's things.
Yeah.
This does not make sense. Like, how is that not, tell me that worked in his favor, please.
Oh, no, of course not. So she just was there. She's not, there was no trial. So she's just there for the sentencing. So an eyewitness testified that he had seen Bill carrying a shopping bag in the Degnans neighborhood on the night of Suzanne's murder. And according to this witness, he had seen Bill's face in full view when Bill walked in front of car headlights. However, the same witness had previously told police that he couldn't see the face of the man because it was way too dark. So they were like, just say you did. And he was like, okay.
Ugh. Okay.
It's just so infuriating. Bill was ultimately sentenced to 3 consecutive life sentences, and the prosecution suggested he be denied parole should he ever qualify. Bill, this is terrible, attempted to hang himself in his cell out of despair, but was rescued. And in the following decades, Bill just served his time in prison quietly and productively. He worked in prison. He took on jobs. He got some managerial roles. He took advantage of prison college programs. He received a degree and studied several trades. And just like he was when he went to those reform schools, he was reported to be a model inmate.
Of course.
And above all else, he continually and adamantly declared his innocence in all 3 crimes forever. Said, I did not do them. And
did he ever get out?
Nope. Sorry.
Oh my God.
So yeah, over the years, he pursued clemency hearings, retrials, lawsuits, like basically tried every avenue to try and get his release. But again and again, his attempts were denied. He remained in prison. And clemency projects, whose lawyers took on cases where they suspected wrongful convictions, did take interest in Bill's case, but they also failed to prove his innocence. And there were actually studies done by psychologists who published some cases on Bill that are questionable now looking back, because they claimed everything from him having schizophrenia to DID, dissociative identity disorder, because of the whole merman thing. I'm like, that is such a weak
shut the fuck up with that. Are you serious?
Yes. They were like, oh, he has a dissociative identity. Like, come on. So Bill's new defense team denied everything, insisted Bill had gotten a rotten deal from corrupt investigators and a subpar attorney. I would agree with that. And Suzanne, but for what it's worth, Suzanne Degnan's family was extremely opposed to any clemency considerations, which you can understand. Like, if they think this guy killed their 6-year-old daughter, like, they're not gonna want any sort of leniency. And at a 2002 hearing, Suzanne's older sister, Betty, who was only 10 when Suzanne was murdered, spoke against Bill, saying, think of the worst nightmare that you cannot put out of your mind. You're not allowed to put out of your mind. But again, you know, they, of course, have been told and believe that this is the person who killed, you know, her sister. So in 1983, oh, this is horrible. Bill was almost released on parole by declaration of a federal judge, but Suzanne's siblings banded together and contested the release. And the attorney general said, only God and Heirens know how many other women he murdered. Now a bleeding heart do-gooder decides that Heirens is rehabilitated and should go free. I'm going to make sure that kill-crazed animal stays where he is.
Oh my God.
They put him back in, and soon politicians and even the Illinois Senate got involved, and it was ruled that he would remain in prison. And he remained in prison. And as the years passed, his family died. But a few high school friends continued to visit him as they got older, like throughout the years. And he was sort of stuck in stasis. Like, they're all moving on with their lives and they're just popping in to visit, you know, his high school friends, but nothing he could do. And so Bill continued to insist on his innocence, and his supporters have repeatedly pointed the finger at that guy, Richard Thomas, the nurse.
Yes.
Who clearly seemed to be a better suspect and even confessed. That said, we also don't know, which is a great point, that Saoirse added here. If he was also, coerced. Like, who knows if he was under the same duress? Like, we don't know, you know, so.
The fact that he did confess, and if he was guilty, like, he's just sitting pretty being like, whatever,
right?
Like, guess I made out like a bandit.
I guess so. I mean, Jesus. So ultimately, being guilty of molesting his daughter, of course, makes him also a likely suspect. So he definitely did do that, but it doesn't necessarily prove he did anything to Suzanne. But if he was guilty, he, like you said, sat pretty until he took that secret to his grave. And now this is just one of the wildest sentences. Ultimately, William Heirens, served one of the longest prison sentences in U.S. history.
Oh, my God.
For a crime he potentially did not commit. That was over 65 years he served.
At some point... go ahead. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, at some point, like, even if it's... I guess it's not technically an open case because someone went to jail, but, like, I don't really know the words to ask the question. If there's a case that people are unsure about, eventually so many years will have passed that there's no way to prove it anymore. Like, there's no more witnesses. I guess you'll always have a fingerprint on file or something, but, like, as time goes on, it's just harder and harder to hash back into something like that.
No, I think about that a lot, and my only consolation when I, like, start to feel, like, panicky about, like, oh my God, like, it's the end of the road, there's no more answers. But then I think, you know what, at a certain point we didn't know about DNA tracing, DNA evidence. Maybe there's something in our future we haven't even conceived of, like,
that's true.
Fucking time travel. I don't know, like, maybe there's some way that, like, the pieces will come together. Maybe somebody else will die and on their deathbed will say something, or in their storage unit you'll find, you know, XYZ. So I feel like there's always potential, but you're right, it feels so much more hopeless as time goes on. And then you start to think, like, well, we have to move on to current cases. We have to, you know, it's like he spent 65 years in prison and he passed away in 2012 at the age of 83. So it's like, we can pursue it maybe, but, like, it wouldn't get him justice. You know, he's already passed.
Ugh.
It's just really too bad.
How many years?
Speaking of 65 years.
65 years. Oh my God.
And he was 83 when he passed. So,
He was
long
a baby.
time. I know. And many people, speaking of deathbed confessions, like hoped maybe he would reveal something before he passed, but he died insisting on his innocence. Nothing changed. And Suzanne Degnan's younger brother apparently felt relieved at the news. He said, "I just never thought this day would come. I was numbed by the previous 29 years of going to parole board hearings." So they were just happy to have it behind them, you know, thinking that he had done it. Like they're convinced it was him, which, I mean, you might have to be if the other option is, oh, the killer's just out there having a grand old time. Maybe like as a coping mechanism, they were like, yeah, we believe the police, he did it, you know?
Right.
I don't know. I can't put myself in their shoes, but born after Suzanne's murders, Jim, who had made that quote about being relieved that Bill had passed, he had been born after Suzanne had been killed, his sister, but he said his parents never spoke of it at home, and in his 20s, he investigated the crime himself. He spoke with authorities. Yeah, and he did his own kind of investigating and concluded that the sentencing was correct and that Bill belonged in prison. So, you know, for what it's worth, he did his own
research.
I don't know. Yep, own research, and that was what he concluded. So, on Bill's death, Suzanne's sister Betty said, "Hopefully he's at peace and we don't have to worry about it anymore. I hope he made amends. I never wished him ill. I just wanted him in prison for everybody's safety. It was never out of retribution. It was out of fear that he could hurt somebody else. And if we did not go to all these parole hearings and protest it and he got out and he hurt a child, you just couldn't live with it." Which I think is a fair argument. It's not their fault the police fucking tortured him into a confession.
Yeah.
So Stephen Drizzen, the legal director at the Center on Wrongful Convictions, regretted the center's inability to win Bill's release because the Center on Wrongful Convictions did try to get him out of prison. He said, "We chased lots of leads, but bottom line, short of proving that the police framed him or finding DNA evidence that exonerated him and implicated someone else, we just could never prove his actual innocence. But the case sure looks different with what we know now. The case for Bill's guilt is anything but certain." So today, if you Google, you know, the lipstick killer, you Google William Heirens, he is the one known as the lipstick killer and is listed as one of the most notorious murderers of the 20th century, even though there's a potential he didn't do it. And you know what? There's a potential he did. I want to be clear. Like, there's very much potential. He was in the area. Who knows? Do I believe he did it? I don't think he murdered Suzanne Degnan, the child, at least.
No.
From what I've read.
I wasn't there, but I think our hunches are exactly aligned, you and me.
Yeah, I think we are aligned on that as well. So just like the Degnan siblings, many people do still remain convinced of William Heirens' guilt, including politicians and judges, and of course the authorities who continue to deny his parole bids, although I would say they probably have a little bit of a bias, but whatever. And the case is considered one of the most controversial of the 20th century due to police misconduct, which I would consider pretty severe, both in Bill's interrogation and the interrogations before him for the same crime. So the interrogation of the custodian as well. And that is the story of William Heirens. It's very unsatisfying, you know?
I'm glad you said it. Because I kind of wanted to go, great story, but then I also wanted to go, horrible story, but then I also wanted to go,
it is.
I don't know how I feel.
I don't either. It's very, it's just, I starting in the true crime world, knew him as a lipstick killer. I didn't even know there was question about it. Like, I just always...
Well, yeah, you hear a name like the lipstick killer, you assume there's been some really solid ground on that. So.
And I will also add that there are a bunch of other inconsistencies. They had him write something down that to check the handwriting compared to the lipstick message. Mm-hmm. And then they used the fact that some of the words were misspelled in the same way to like say he did it. But then he later said, oh no, they told me to spell it that way so
Oh,
they could
God.
match. Right. So like you think, oh, well, shit, if he's spelling like this really random word the exact same way. And he's like, no, that's how they instructed me to write it. So, you know, I mean, and again, it's like he said, police said, you know, so the police denied that. But there's just a lot of weird stuff. Some people claim that the lipstick message may not have been written by the killer and may have been written by a reporter who wanted to make the story more salacious.
Interesting. Okay.
Some people claim that the fingerprint on the ransom note was planted because it was a little too perfect.
Okay.
So, you know, there's and these are all just claims that I've heard. I'm not saying anything is proven one way or the other, but there's just a lot of question marks, you know?
Sure. Okay.
So-
Wow. Well, I guess we'll never know, especially now that he's gone, but
It's too bad.
good storytelling. I appreciate the two-parter. I
I'm
don't
just
know.
glad the two-parter has been completed. You know, moving
know.
on.
Well, good job, Christine. I don't know what to tell you. I'm just
Let's talk about the
not
meat
feeling,
shower.
just not feeling satisfied, only bummed, but happy to be here. Also, everybody, this is shifting gears. This is your moment to drink some water. Your weekly reminder, you thirsty little rats.
Oh,
Glug,
I'm gonna
glug.
go drink some wine, but whatever.
Oh, right. It is wine time for you, isn't it? Do you have a wine
Mhm.
already on your mind of what you're going to do a little sipping on tonight?
You know, I got a nice Pinot Grigio in the fridge that
I love a Pinot Grigio. That's my favorite smell of all of them.
Really
Mm-hmm.
very fruity. Well, I put it in my suitcase after a venue gave it to us, so I consider it free wine. So I'm gonna drink
math.
it.
Yeah.
Girl math.
No,
yeah.
Pinot Grigio was always the one of all the wines that my mom would drink, and I would smell all of them. Pinot Grigio is the one that I would get excited to smell. The other ones I was like, it just smells like kind of normal wine, but Pinot Grigio gets me going.
Yeah, it has a very fruity smell.
I like to think if I drank wine, that would be my go-to.
You totally would be like a white wine, like gossipy,
Fruity bitch.
fruity bitch. That's exactly where I was going. Yes.
All right, well, have a sip for me. I'll have some water for you.
Thank you.
And
that's
why
we
drink?